So with your eyes open or closed, whichever feels more comfortable, take a moment or two to reflect on the following question. When was the last time, the most recent time, that you were concerned with what someone else thought of you? If you're like me, then you may notice that a knee-jerk reflexive thought that first comes to mind is something along the lines of, I don't care what others think of me. I've learned that when a thought like this enters my mind, I need to take some deep breaths, settle back into the inquiry with a sense of allowance and space. So when is the last time you were concerned with what someone else thought of you? Because one way or another, we all have these sorts of thoughts, these sorts of experiences. Last week, I witnessed on social media somebody I'm a bit friendly with get into a debate with someone else. This debate turned into a heated argument, over time becoming more and more personal. It ended with this person publicly announcing that he's blocked and unfriended the other person. He then went on what he called a purge, unfriending many other people he decided weren't supportive or sufficiently friendly. I guess I was one of the fortunate survivors of his media purge. And it was so easy for me to look at this whole drama unfolding from afar, from an objective, more removed distance, as an uninvolved, uninvested, and unbiased witness. And it was so easy for me to say to myself, gosh, this person, they really lost their head with this. He's wrapped up in so much reactivity and unskillful managing of himself. It wasn't that many years ago that I then recalled something of this sort happening with me. I had been part of a professional listserv and took someone publicly to task for something that they'd written. I later made amends, publicly apologizing for not handling this in a private and more respectful manner. But my reactivity, which I was not aware of at the time, was rooted in my desire for my opinion to matter more, and for me to be held by my colleagues in high esteem. So we get caught up. We all get caught up in this sort of stuff, one way or another. Wanting to be liked, to be thought of well, to be admired, to be valued. So we're now examining and practicing with the final set of the 8 worldly winds: fame and ill repute, or shame. And we can easily look at these two and we can say, this doesn't really apply to me. I'm not famous. I'm not a celebrity. And fame, it just isn't my thing. Yes, these winds are describing the obvious winds of fame, of being known. But they're also speaking to something as mundane and ordinary as our desire to be liked on social media, and our reactivity if we are unfriended or unfollowed, etc. Or when we have a disagreement or misunderstanding with a friend or a loved one, and how tightly we can hold on to the words of disagreement spoken by the other with reactivity and on impulse. I want to share with you a story I read. It's in a book written by Ajahn Brahm. There's a young monk who's really invested in reaching enlightenment. He goes away to seclude himself and meditate. Every few weeks, someone comes over to his little island on his side of the lake to deliver supplies. 3 years pass by this way. At the end of his 3rd year in seclusion, the monk wants to let his teacher and abbot know how well he's done and how enlightened he is. So in careful, intentional, beautiful calligraphy, he writes the following poem comprised of just 4 lines. The conscientious young monk, meditating 3 years alone, can no longer be moved by the 4 pairs of worldly winds. And he carefully wrapped the poem, handed it to the person who would bring him supplies, and asked him to bring it across the lake back to the abbot and to bring back his response. The monk thought to himself, when the abbot reads the words of this poem and how carefully they were written, he's going to recognize how far I've come and how I've reached enlightenment. As the days move on, the monk imagines the pleasure his teacher is going to have, how he's going to likely hang this poem up on his wall, and how he will be assigned by the abbot to a promotion. Eventually, the person bearing supplies returns, and he hands the monk a scroll. He unwraps it, barely able to contain his excitement. And he recognizes his own poem in his hands. And in red ink, right at the end of the first line of the poem, the abbot had written the word fart. And then at the end of the second line, in red ink, again, the word fart. And so too at the end of the third line of the poem and at the end of the fourth line of the poem. The monk was so angry. Not only was he not getting the appreciation he deserved, but this was just so insulting. So it's the first time in 3 years the monk was leaving his little space. In a rage, he storms into the office of the abbot. He slams the scroll down on his desk and he demands an explanation. The abbot picks up the monk's scroll. He unwraps it. He clears his throat and he slowly reads the words of the poem. The conscientious young monk, meditating 3 years alone, can no longer be moved by the 4 pairs of worldly winds. And the abbot says, so monk, you are no longer moved by the 4 pairs of worldly winds. Yet 4 little farts have blown you right across the lake. If you read his books or hear him teach, you'll see how this story is so characteristic of the style and humor of Ajahn Brahm. I find the story helpful because it's true. We reach some point of growth and development, and we begin to think that in some way, this challenge or edge is behind us. We're over it, it's past it, we're beyond it, perhaps transcended it. I wouldn't act like my friend on social media did. That wouldn't be me. And then, one way or another, sooner or later, the worldly winds blow, and we wobble, and we sway along with it, and perhaps topple. The monk was blown all over the place by the winds of fame, of wanting to be recognized, respected, valued, and well known. Each of us, in our own way, can relate to this. Take a moment and see into this for yourselves. Now, here's the thing with the winds. They blow, and we are subject to their vicissitudes. We don't transcend them, nor should we attempt to bypass them. Experiencing the winds of fame and shame, as with all of the winds, is not the issue. How we experience the winds, how we awarefully relate with ourselves is. First, awareness, acknowledging what we are experiencing and how we are experiencing them. Acknowledging to ourselves, what is it feeling like, viscerally and in the body? Can we make space for the experiences of the worldly winds as they blow on us and through us? This is our practice. Awareness of our experience and experience of experience. And again, awareness of experience and actual experience of the experience. And thus the winds blow and then pass, and we're still here, wobbling and swaying a lot less than we otherwise would have been. So our practice today is with awareness. What winds blow for us today? Can we hold space for and with this awareness? In what ways do we experience them? How does the thinking mind react? What's it like in the body? What's it like to experience the wobbling and the swaying? Thank you for your kind attention.